My name is Cheryl, and I am 34 years old. Sunday brunch used to be something I looked forward to, not because I loved overpriced eggs or bottomless mimosas, but because it was the only time I could pretend we were a real family. I'd show up early like I always did, make sure the reservation was held, make sure the bill was covered, even leave extra for the valet, and no one ever asked me to do it, but no one ever thanked me either, because it was just understood that Cheryl takes care of it. That morning, the sky was overcast, the kind of gray that makes everything feel a little heavier, but the rooftop was packed anyway. My mom picked the place, something trendy but elegant, which really meant expensive and photographed well. I sat alone at the table for 20 minutes while the waiter hovered nearby, pretending he wasn't judging me for taking up a foretop by myself. I kept checking my phone, not because I was worried, but because a small part of me still believed they might show up and act like family for once. They arrived together, all of them, laughing like they'd just stepped out of a joke I wasn't invited to hear. My mom and Aunt Mel walked in first, sunglasses on even though we were in the shade, and my brother Travis followed behind them with that relaxed swagger he always had when he knew someone else would handle the messes. Sierra trailed last, eyes glued to her phone, not even glancing up long enough to acknowledge I'd been sitting there waiting. Travis high-fived the waiter like they were friends. Mel asked where the mimosas were, like that was the most urgent problem in her life. My mom adjusted her sunglasses and smiled at me in a way that didn't reach her eyes. I ordered for the table like usual. I listened to them talk about things I hadn't been included in. Little trips, inside jokes, plans for later. And I kept my face pleasant because that's what I've always done. I've always smoothed things over, filled gaps, made it easy. Halfway through the second round of drinks, I said something dumb like, "It's good to have everyone here." Just trying to break the silence that always surrounded me, even when the table was full. That's when my mom leaned in. She looked over her glass and smiled like she was letting me in on a secret. Her voice dropped low enough that it felt intimate, like mother to daughter, like love. Then she whispered, "Don't confuse presence with importance." I blinked. Sure, I misheard, because who says that to their own child? But then Aunt Mel chuckled like it was an inside joke, and Travis smirked, and Sierra didn't look up, but her thumb paused for half a second, like she caught it too. The air in my chest went cold. In one sentence, they made it clear what I was to them. Convenient, expected, optional as a person, essential as a wallet. I sat there for a moment, trying to breathe normally, thinking about all the times I quietly kept them afloat, covering overdrafts, paying my mom's mortgage when she missed payments, bailing Travis out when his latest investment imploded, covering Sierra's tuition shortfall when her scholarship didn't stretch far enough. They knew. They all knew. They just didn't respect it. So I smiled. I didn't argue. I finished my drink, left a generous tip, more than the server probably deserved, but I figured someone should be treated like a human being that day. I stood up, said I had to take a call, and walked out. They didn't follow. No one asked if I was okay. No one even noticed the moment I stopped pretending. And as I stepped into the elevator and felt the doors close, I realized something with a strange calm. If my presence was optional, then so was my money. 14 days is a long time when you stop reacting and start watching. I didn't announce anything. I didn't send a warning text or make a dramatic exit from the group chat. I just let the quiet do its work while I disconnected myself piece by piece. The shared account went first. It was supposed to be an emergency fund years ago, a place where everyone contributed and no one abused it. But I was the only one who ever deposited anything. My mom used it for cosmetic procedures she swore were medically necessary. Travis treated it like a checking account. Sierra dipped into it whenever her life felt inconvenient. I closed it, transferred the remaining balance into my own account, and locked it without a word. Then came the Vermont place. My name was on the deed, 60% of the down payment was mine, and somehow that still turned into a family timeshare where I paid the taxes, stocked the fridge, cleaned the place, and listened to complaints about the water pressure. I called a real estate lawyer, got the valuation, and sold my share to an outside buyer. No announcement, just signatures and wire transfers. The place was no longer theirs to assume access to, and I didn't feel guilty about it. I felt relieved. After that, I canceled everything else they'd been quietly enjoying on my dime. The shared phone plan, the cloud storage, streaming services, Prime deliveries that magically showed up at my mom's door. I sent a single message to each of them with their final balances and a simple line telling them they'd need to set up their own accounts going forward. I didn't explain myself. I didn't apologize. I didn't owe them a speech. 3 days later, the first text came through from Sierra. Why is everything declined? No hello, no concern, just confusion that the tap had been turned off. I didn't reply. Within minutes, the group chat exploded. At first, it was confusion, then anger, then rapid-fire questions. Is this a glitch? What happened to the account? Why are we locked out of Vermont? Did the Netflix password change? They weren't asking because they missed me. They were asking because they couldn't reach me. Travis messaged me privately, pretending to be calm, asking if I could spot him until next week. My mom called 3 times in a row without leaving a voicemail, like she could brute force her way back into my attention. Aunt Mel sent a long, guilt-drenched message about family roots and how money shouldn't come between blood. Sierra sent strings of question marks, like that would somehow unlock everything again. I muted them all. 2 days after that, a number I hadn't seen in months lit up my phone. Uncle Jeff. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. He said they were panicking, that Travis was calling around trying to figure out how to get access to the Vermont place again, that he'd even talked to a lawyer about contesting the sale. Sierra was melting down, telling people I'd hacked her accounts and destroyed the family. Aunt Mel was floating rumors that I'd joined a cult or had some kind of breakdown. And my mom, he said, was telling anyone who would listen that she was worried about my mental health, that I'd always had issues, and that she was praying I'd come back to my senses. I sat there listening, phone pressed to my ear, realizing they weren't just mad. They were rewriting the story. They were trying to make themselves victims and me the unstable one for stepping away. Uncle Jeff paused and then said something that landed hard. You're not crazy for walking away, Cheryl. You're finally sane. That night, I started locking down every remaining loose end. My mom was still listed as a co-signer on an old loan. Gone. Travis still had access to shared folders with tax documents and ID scans. Deleted. Passwords changed. Bank authorizations reviewed line by line. I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I just closed doors. Around midnight, my phone rang from a blocked number. I shouldn't have answered, but curiosity won. It was Sierra, crying, not asking how I was, just demanding money because her card wasn't working and she was stranded in Vegas. She said her friends had left, her phone was dying, and she needed $500 wired immediately to get home. I asked her where she was staying. She hesitated. I listened. Then I hung up. A minute later, she texted that I was evil, that I was her family, that I'd regret this. Another message followed, saying everyone was turning on me. I stared at the screen, waiting to feel something. Regret, guilt, doubt. Nothing came. The next morning, the group chat was gone, deleted. I was blocked everywhere. And I knew with a quiet certainty that they were done pretending this was a misunderstanding. They were gearing up for something else. 2 days later, an envelope arrived that changed the temperature of the room before I even opened it. Thick paper, formal return address, a law firm in Albany I didn't recognize. It wasn't the kind of mail you skim while standing at the counter. It was the kind you sit down for. Inside was a motion filed by Travis to contest the Vermont sale, and attached to it, in bold, was a statement claiming I'd acted under emotional distress and lacked the mental capacity to manage family assets. I read that sentence twice before it landed. Then I saw the notarized declaration beneath it, my mother's name, typed, signed, sealed. She wrote that I'd become erratic over the past year, that I'd withdrawn from family support systems, that I'd made unpredictable financial decisions. She cited moments that didn't exist, claimed I called her late at night screaming, that I sent angry texts about betrayal and being unappreciated, that I threatened to burn bridges permanently. There was no mention of the years I paid her mortgage, no mention of the overdrafts I covered, the repairs, the emergencies, none of the brunches, none of the silence I swallowed. Just a clean, careful story designed to make me look unstable for stopping. I called Uncle Jeff. He didn't say hello. He said, "They made a move." I told him everything, the motion, the statement, the way my own mother had framed me. He exhaled and said what I already knew but hadn't named yet. People like that don't just take. They rewrite history to make you look crazy for stopping. Control doesn't end when the money does. It just changes shape. I hired a lawyer the same day, a real one. He read through the motion and smirked the way professionals do when they've seen this exact play before. He asked one question that hit harder than any accusation. Do you have proof of what you've given them? Not feelings, not intent, proof. Bank statements, transfers, emails, receipts. That's when it hit me how much I'd relied on trust, how little I'd documented because they were family. We gathered what we could, statements, wires, messages asking for help that ended with me sending money. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. The rebuttal went out within days, and 2 weeks later, the judge dismissed the motion for lack of standing and insufficient evidence. The sale stood. Legally, I'd won. Emotionally, something else had shifted. Because winning didn't stop them. It provoked them. The next blow came quietly. I logged into my online banking one morning and saw a red banner across the screen. Account temporarily suspended due to security concerns. No warning, no explanation. Customer support told me a third party had reported suspicious transfers under false pretenses. The transfer flagged was 6 months old, my transfer, from a family investment account I funded and had every legal right to empty. The representative hesitated when I asked where the report came from, then said it was linked to a former joint account holder. My stomach dropped. Mom. The hold lasted 48 hours, long enough to bounce my rent auto pay, long enough to freeze my credit card, long enough to make me miss an appointment I'd waited 6 weeks for because I didn't have cash for a ride. It was petty, it was vicious, and it worked. The next morning, my job emailed me. Subject line, concerns regarding recent legal activity. Someone had sent HR a fake article formatted like a LinkedIn feature about an unstable consultant with a history of financial exploitation. My name, my photo, my title. It wasn't real, but it looked convincing enough to plant doubt. I sat in that office explaining something that sounded insane out loud. My boss believed me. HR was cautious. They let it go. But I felt the shift, the glances, the whispers, the silence when I entered a room. That night, I lay on my couch, staring at the ceiling, and realized the truth I'd been avoiding. They weren't trying to get the money back anymore. They were trying to ruin me for leaving. I called Uncle Jeff again. He didn't ask for proof. He said, "They're falling apart. This is desperation." He was right. Sierra messaged me next, not with threats or tears, but a screenshot. A group chat without me. Travis accusing Mom of going too far with the fraud report. Aunt Mel calling Sierra a traitor for wavering. And then my mom, plain as day, typing, "She was never really one of us anyway." Sierra added one line, "I didn't think it would get like this." Then she blocked me. That should have been the end. It wasn't. Just after midnight, someone knocked on my door, Soft, polite. 3 knocks, pause. 3 more. Same rhythm, over and over. I looked through the peephole. No one there. Then I heard it from behind me, the fire escape. I grabbed the bat without thinking and moved slowly to the back window. A silhouette stood on the metal grating, not trying to get in yet, just watching. I called 911. By the time officers arrived, the person was gone. Nothing stolen, no forced entry, just a cigarette butt left on the railing. The report was filed, no suspects, no proof. The next morning, a text came from an unknown number. You don't get to walk away clean. I changed the locks, installed cameras, filed another report, and finally accepted what this had become. This wasn't a family dispute. It was a campaign, and I was done playing defense. I didn't want revenge anymore. That surprised me most of all. After the bank freeze, the HR meeting, the silhouette on my fire escape, something inside me went quiet. Not numb, just resolved. I realized that if I kept reacting to every escalation, they would always have a reason to stay in my life. Control feeds on response. So I decided to end it in a way they couldn't twist. A week after the judge dismissed the motion, I learned through Uncle Jeff that they were hosting a family reunion. Big smiles, group photos, a banner stretched across the backyard fence that read, "Family first, no matter what." The irony would have been funny if it hadn't been so predictable. They were trying to prove unity, trying to show the world they were fine without me, that I was the outlier, the problem child who walked away. I didn't comment. I didn't correct anyone. I let them have their performance. Then I did something I hadn't planned on doing. I reached out. One message in the old group chat I hadn't touched in months. No accusations, no explanations, just a sentence. Let's meet one time. Talk it through. That was it. We chose a small Italian place downtown. Neutral territory, private booth in the back. I arrived early, ordered water, and waited. They came in together like nothing had happened. Smiles, hugs that didn't quite land, small jokes, not one apology, not even a pause to acknowledge the damage. I let them talk themselves out, listened as they framed everything as misunderstandings and hurt feelings on all sides. When the food arrived and the noise of the room settled, I laid it all out calmly. The brunch, the accounts, the legal motion, the fraud report, the fake article, the knock at my door in the middle of the night. I watched their faces shift as the room got quiet. Then I offered them something they didn't expect, a clean exit, a trust account with monthly deposits for 1 year. No contact, no access, no emotional strings, just support from a distance so everyone could move on. I slid the documents across the table. They didn't hesitate. They signed immediately. No questions, no negotiations. That told me everything I needed to know. I left the restaurant thinking maybe, just maybe, this was the adult ending everyone claims to want. 2 weeks later, the trust was empty. Every dollar gone. Withdrawn through coordinated transfers. Accounts under Travis, accounts under Sierra. One registered to a shell company using my mom's maiden name. They didn't even try to hide it. They were waiting to see if I'd react. I didn't. I pressed charges, froze the assets, closed the door, for real this time. There was no big moment after that. No final confrontation where someone cried or begged or finally admitted they were wrong. That's the lie people like to believe about closure, that it arrives with a speech or a revelation or a tearful apology that makes everything make sense. What actually happened was quieter, colder, and far more final. Once the trust was drained and the charges were filed, the noise stopped almost overnight. No more messages. No more fake concern routed through cousins or church friends. No more legal threats dressed up as misunderstandings. They didn't fight it, not really. They couldn't. The paper trail was too clean. The withdrawals were too obvious. The shell account was sloppy, rushed, panicked. For people who'd spent years manipulating in subtle ways, this was amateur work, and it showed. I got one email from Travis's lawyer asking if I'd consider mediation. I didn't reply. Aunt Mel posted one last vague quote about forgiveness and pride, then deleted it when no one reacted. My mother didn't reach out at all. Not through friends, not through Jeff, not through some late-night voicemail she could pretend never happened. That hurt more than I expected, but only for a moment. Because it confirmed something I'd been circling for years. She never wanted me back. She wanted control back. Uncle Jeff called a week later and told me they were unraveling. Not dramatically, not in a way that would make for a good story, but quietly, the way things fall apart when there's no one left holding them together. Travis and Sierra weren't speaking. Mel had distanced herself once money stopped flowing. My mom was telling people she was tired and focusing on herself. No one mentioned my name anymore. It was like I'd been edited out of the family narrative entirely. And that's when the strangest thing happened. I felt lighter, not triumphant, not vindicated, just free in a way I didn't have language for before. I stopped checking my phone out of habit. I stopped replaying conversations in my head, wondering what I should have said differently. I slept through the night without that low-grade anxiety humming in my chest. My apartment felt calmer, like it finally belonged to me and not to the constant possibility of someone knocking, asking, taking. One afternoon, weeks later, I realized I hadn't thought about them at all that day. Not once. No anger, no grief, no guilt. Just a normal day that didn't require me to manage anyone else's emotions or finances or crises. That's when I understood this was the real ending. Walking away clean doesn't look like forgiveness. It looks like absence. I still talk to Uncle Jeff. We have coffee once a month. He never asks if I regret it. He doesn't need to. He told me something recently that stuck with me. He said families like ours don't break when someone leaves. They break when the wrong person stays too long. I didn't burn the bridge. I stopped rebuilding it after they set it on fire for the last time. Whatever they tell people now, whatever version of me they carry forward, that's theirs to live with. I know the truth. I know what I gave. I know what they took. And I know that the moment I stopped being useful, I stopped being welcome. So I chose myself, quietly, permanently. And for the first time in my life, that choice didn't cost me anything at all.